Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm Sandy Robel, your host for the show, and we have back with us today Barbara DeLong, who appeared a couple of months ago on a call-in show. She is a spiritual empath, and the show that we have for you now is about UFOs and their history. And Barbara has a tremendous amount of knowledge, and I think you'll enjoy the show. And please do email us with your thoughts and suggestions that you have for this show or other shows. And now, welcome, Barbara.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're able to come back again.
Oh, me too. I'm not an expert in UFOs, but I do know a bit.
Well, you know a lot more than I do. And it seems to be very much in the news these days, not necessarily newspaper, but in the media. And I'm just wondering if maybe we'll be finding that they're being spotted again. They seem to come at certain intervals.
They do come in waves. Actually, in those people, the MUFON people who look at them and report them and study them, do find that they do come in clusters. But they aren't seasonal, although there are a lot of them in the wintertime. Of course, nobody's out there looking for them then. But they have always been there, and probably always will be there since prehistoric times. We have pictographs in caves that are millions of years old, probably, that have flying saucers in them. And you know, through the Renaissance, you see them in famous paintings. They're depicted there. Machu Picchu, Pumapunka. They have drawings that and carvings that actually do depict space people. Mm-hmm. So they've been around forever, and I think that recently it has become more and more something that is more of a controversial thing, but they've always been there, and going back to as far as this country goes, I think the first mass sighting that I've heard about, and there probably were others, I just haven't discovered them yet, would be the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942, where there was an amazing display of UFOs over Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And because we had been set up to protect our shores from the Japanese, there were all sorts of gun embankments, and they started to fire on them, and the planes were firing on them, and everything just bounced off of them. And there were actually some deaths from the collateral damage from the debris of our planes and our missiles as they were bouncing off back onto the ground. And it was at that time, I believe it was a triangle-shaped UFO that was just hovering, and they attacked it with everything they had, and they weren't able to not even dent it or even get through it. And it went on for quite a while. It went on for a number of hours, and people were out in their lawns watching it. And I think the next big sighting that I know about was 1952, and that would be the Washington National Airport was closed down for a great length of time because there were UFOs hovering over it. Mm-hmm. And they sent planes up, and the planes, couldn't do anything. They didn't fire upon it, but that was witnessed by thousands of people. Battle of Los Angeles, again, thousands mm-hmm. of people.
It sounds like you've done a lot of research into this and have done quite a bit. We can get into that a little bit more. And when you talk about the triangular shape, in the early 90s, when I was working, it was over in New York State, Route 52. I did see something like that with a whole group of other people. So we can, I just thought I'd mention that. And they thought it was ultralights, and I kept thinking, well, if they think it's ultralights out of Stormville Airport, why don't they just go and catch the people that are supposedly doing this? But when I saw it, the lights were too evenly spaced, and then when it backed away, it kind of disappeared, or almost as if the lights, they were like large searchlights in a way, but they were very evenly spaced mm-hmm. and triangular, very uniform. Before we go on with the UFOs, what I'd like to have our audience know is a little bit about Barbara DeLong and how and when you got into being interested in UFOs.
Well, it's kind of fun. I was a senior in college in 1966, and
And where did you go to college?
Eastern Michigan University.
Okay.
And that was during the time that they locked the women up in their dorms at 11 o'clock at night because they were afraid after 11 o'clock we'd get dangerous.
Well, that was very liberal. Connecticut here was 10.
Oh, geez. Well, yeah, we were locked in, and it was I think it was March actually, and we had windows open, and we were listening to the radio station, and we heard the announcer say, you know, that a UFO had been spotted by the campus, and they had shut the traffic down to the 3 major airports that were in the area, and we thought that was kind of cool, and then we started to look outside, and we realized that this. That they seemed to be saying that it was on the campus, which was a little scary to all of us. And so we, you know, opened the windows. We heard police cars, you know, with their sirens coming. We heard over the radios of the police cars as they came by that it was on the baseball field. And now there was a huge building between my campus, my dorm, and the baseball field, and we heard them saying, we're going to turn the lights on to get a better look, and we saw the glow in the sky, and then this huge object raised up, just straight up into the air, no noise, no nothing, and it zoomed over my dorm. It blocked out the sky. I was probably, I'm not really great with distance, but if it had had a VIN number, I think I would have been able to read it. It was that close.
And what shape was it?
Huh?
What shape?
This was a disc, and it didn't have lights on the outside, but it glowed different colors. So it appeared to have lights, and then it zoomed off to the, you know, just it took off, and it was. And there was no air displacement. There was no sound of the sound barrier being broken. And of course I called home and wanted to come home immediately, and my mother the next day asked, and so we all were really upset, and waited for the 12 o'clock news report to see what was going on. There was nothing. There was no report of it. There was nothing. And my mother checked the news and everything and found that there was no report of it.
So she thought you were crazy, or did she believe you?
No, she believed me. But a friend of hers was the publisher of the local newspaper in New Rochelle, and she told him the story, and they were the only one that printed it on the East Coast. And I got teased like you wouldn't believe about how much beer did you have, and I don't drink. And so for 40 years or so, I was teased unmercifully about, you know, the UFO I saw, and about, let's see, it was 2010, 2009, an author published a book called In Focus Paranormal, and it was a series of the authenticated UFO sightings that had taken place in the United States, and my campus was one of them.
Now, when this occurred, did they actually have news media at the campus?
No, but they had military police there with police dogs the entire rest of the evening. And there were, the boys, of course, were not locked in, and a lot of them got out and they went to the field, and they did see that there definitely was an imprint on the baseball field, so that something did happen. And I think what to me was the most fascinating thing was after the surprise, there was no shock. There was, you know, there's I think a spiritual sort of sense of, gosh, we're not alone, and gosh, you know, these people could have hurt us and they didn't, so that whoever was out there was not looking to hurt us or damage us or wipe us out or eat our brains or anything like that. So that started me on a spiritual pathway that I'm on to this day. It's sort of like we're not alone. We're a clog in a wheel. We're a step on the ladder, but we're not alone. And there are those ahead of us that are keeping watch.
Why do you think governments try to keep it secret? They really don't publicize it so much. Of course, now people have cell phones that they could be videotaping. And I know there have been instances where even state police have it on video.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I had seen in another part of New York State, I saw a couple of years later, or several years later on TV, was exactly what I had seen.
Well,
and again, it's like you're describing, very quiet. Nobody was just mesmerized. It was a group of Boy Scouts and their parents. A meeting had ended, and I had walked out, and I saw them looking up, and I looked up, and we were just standing there. And then I didn't speak to anyone. I just went to my car, and I don't know why. Looking back, I'm thinking, that's really peculiar. Why didn't I say something to other people? I just walked away, got in my car, and went home.
I think it's confirmation that we're not alone. I think that it confirms the fact that there are others out there and that they mean us no ill will. As far as the government goes, the government is a huge corporation that likes to control everything. And I think because they don't have information or as much as they'd like, they hold back whatever they have to control us. There was a study done quite a while ago, and the outcome of it was that if humanity really knew about extraterrestrials, they wouldn't be able to handle it, and there would be mass panic and all sorts of stuff. And that goes back to the 50s, possibly, when that study was done. But the reality is, in any other country, in China, in South America, UFOs are an accepted thing. They aren't something that anybody's trying to control. And if you stood in China and said, "Oh, I saw a UFO last night," people would say, "And?" It's just common knowledge that they're out there, that they're, and I think they're out there on purpose. I think they're out there to reassure us and to get us used to the fact that they're out there and not to be afraid of them.
Well, I imagine our government would probably be thinking too that whatever technology they have, they'd like to get their hands on it and use it, or worry that another country might have it, or who knows what.
Well, unfortunately, governments only have one thing in mind, unfortunately, and that's control and power and taking control of other people. So I do believe, I believe that there is going to be communication, but they're not going to hit the UN or heads of state or anything like that. I think that we will be communicated with telepathically, and not so much as, hi, we're here, we're the UFOs, but more of a greater awareness of a cosmic family that we're a part of. I don't think that we as a people are ready for the kind of brotherhood or the kind of unity that cosmically is out there. I think in many ways the Earth is in quarantine until we grow up a little bit better. I mean, we try to kill each other. We try to control each other. It's vengeance. It's war. It's awful stuff. We're not kind people. Well, some of us are, but as a whole, we haven't learned that we're all one people, one family.
Well, supposedly we've just entered the age of Aquarius, which should last about 2,000 years. Supposedly will be an age of peace, so we'll see. But we may not.
We're not there yet.
See it, because we're since February. It's only a couple of months supposedly that we've started this new age, and I think a lot of people are looking at it that way. That many times the people in the government, the citizens, aren't so much interested in war. They just want to live their ordinary everyday life.
Right, and if you take, and I'm not, with all the stuff that's been going on lately, I want to really say I'm not actually saying I think the government should be overthrown. I think it should be reworked slightly because it's not serving us as well as it could.
Right, and they're justifying it by saying, by keeping all our phone records and everything, the National Security Agency, if they find somebody that's a terrorist, they could trace back and find out. And I have mixed feelings about that. Maybe we could talk to a terrorist and not be aware of it, and they'd want to know. But, then they talk about the Boston Massacre, and they weren't able to catch them or know in advance.
Yeah, it's a little scary, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, if we're coming into an age of peace, I just, it's going to take probably 1,000 years or more to get there. We spoke. I mentioned the name Billy Meyer to you a while back, and he was he's Scandinavian, and he's he's in his 80s now, and the whole premise of everything that he writes and everything is that he has been contacted by aliens and been given prophecies, and his prophecies have been exceedingly accurate, horrifyingly so. And if you read through the most of them, you know, they seem very dire, and yet 800 years from now, we're supposed to finally enter into that time of peace, love, and oneness. He says that it's channeled material. He says that it's material the aliens have given him, and I can't debate it, but I have a more positive outlook for humanity, and I'd like to think it's going to take us less time to come to that understanding that we really are one family.
I could see it taking 800 years.
I can too, unfortunately.
Now, if our audience wants to know more about this, was it Billy Myers? Or?
Billy Meyer.
Billy Meyer.
M-I-E-R-E.
Oh, M-I-E-R-E.
And there's a ton of information out there on him, and there are videos, and he took some of the very, very first photographs of UFOs that have not been able to be debunked. They can't prove that they aren't UFOs. He's taken tons of pictures that are out there, and he has written prolifically on his contact with the Asgard command, and
what is the Asgard command?
I don't really know. It's those people that are in control of overseeing the planet, and I take umbrage with the fact that in a lot of his writings, he berates humanity for being stupid and this and that, and that's, in my experience, that's not channeled material. That's somebody's ego getting in there. Mm-hmm. He grew up under the Nazis, so he has, a different philosophy on everything, and channel material comes through a person and an individual according to what their frame of reference is. So he comes from a tougher place than we do. So I don't know. I'm not going to say he's not getting material, because his prophecies have been dead on. I mean, down to the 2 Gulf Wars, down to whole bunches of stuff. But it's scary stuff.
So have you actually read books by him, or just Googled material? What have you?
He has 4 volumes out of. His material originally was channeled into German and then translated, and he has written down his conversations with these entities that he's talked to, and it's very hard to read. It's Meyer says this and the alien says this, or the extraterrestrial, or whatever you want to call them, and lots of times it's easier to read the synopsis of what he's written as opposed to what he's actually, the translations, which are tough.
You think it's the whoever translated it, or just the way he wrote it?
Well, he started his contact with these people when he was 5 years old, and he's in his 70s now, and he's still writing like crazy.
Ooh.
So there is an amazing amount of material out there. He's sort of like our Edgar Casey. Edgar Casey, he everything he wrote was transcribed. Everything he wrote is available down at the Edgar Casey Institute. So he is, I don't even want to call him a prophet. I'll call him, Edgar Casey, yeah, term prophet can be applied to him. But Billy Meyer, I'm not sure about prophecy, yet his predictions have been very accurate. So for me, it's still out for figuring out just how much of it is accurate and not, but it's an impressive amount of work.
It's fascinating, and there's a lot more material out there than I would have ever guessed.
Oh, gee, yeah. My husband's website, BibleUFO.com, goes back to all of the references in the Bible to UFOs, and the book's 400 pages long. It's all over the place. I mean, Ezekiel's wheels were wheels within the wheels, and if you go back to the Vedas and the Vimanas were spaceships that people rode in.
Right, and Usha Kumar, the producer of Practical Talk Time, was born and raised in India. So we were discussing at a future date, we're going to do another show. I'll be doing another show with you on Beyond Reality, and we'd like to have you back to actually talk about the Vedas with Usha
Oh, I
and
would love
about those
to.
different things, because she's been brought up in that culture and knows about it. So it'd be an interesting program to have. So that's our invitation to you for future shows.
Absolutely.
We really enjoy having you talk about these things. And I know back in October, I believe that's when your husband passed away.
Yes.
You were going to be on our Halloween show, and then it turned out to be a storm and a
Didn't quite
blizzard
make it,
2 years
yeah.
in a row, and not two years in a row, a blizzard, but that was fascinating too. How did you meet your late husband? Was it through UFO interest, or?
Yeah. I have a radio show on Blog Talk Radio called Nightlight. And when I found the book that told about my sighting that authenticated it, I got the author to come on my show and I interviewed him. And Patrick was, his shows were in the paranormal category, and he never went into spiritual because he didn't believe in psychics and stuff. But he saw that there was a show on UFOs, and he came into the chat room and he listened, and then he started to try to contact me and saying, I'm an expert in the field. And so I pulled him on and we started talking, and ended up talking a lot for about 7 months. And he was in California and I was out here.
Ooh.
And decided that we did some writing together, and it was it worked beautifully. And he wanted to come out and see the stone walls and chambers that are out here. And so he said, why don't I just move in? And looking back at it, it sounds, crazy, but I said, sure. And 7 months after we started talking, I flew to San Francisco. He picked me up with his van, all packed, his 3 cats. And our first date was driving 3,000 miles across country.
Oh my goodness, that's some story in itself.
Yeah. It does sound crazy.
Yes,
but
that's the way things happen
It didn't
sometimes.
feel crazy, and since then we did a documentary on the stone walls and the chambers. It was presented at Megalithomania, and we have actually he researched the book that I'll be writing if I ever get a chance to, called The Bible and the Paranormal, because the Bible's full of paranormal instances. It's a wonderful handbook that talks about all of the paranormal things that happen.
Right, and I think that's something we can get into in the next show that we'll be doing, Beyond Reality.
Sure.
And last night I was listening to a show on the radio, and someone whose last name happens, I can't think of the first name offhand, Stone, and they own property in New Hampshire, but it didn't say where in New Hampshire. Supposed to be very much like Stonehenge, where the sun comes through and
It's America's Stonehenge. And-
summer solstice.
Yeah.
And I guess the one who owns it, I can't think of his first name, but Stone, he found on Google Earth, and then he followed a straight path through,
And
it led right back to Stonehenge.
And
they're saying that couldn't have happened just by chance, and it would have had to be something that came from the sky, from above.
that you find a lot of that. You find a lot of the early maps that have been drawn. You had to do it from above. Look at the Nazca lines. Look at their characteristic, the characters and everything that they did. You had to be above them to be able to appreciate them. So there had to be some sort of flight, some sort of intervention, some sort of, somebody was maybe intervening where they shouldn't have. But there are lots of hints. It's not just cosmic graphology or graffiti. It's something happened. There's a connection here between us and those star people up there.
And what's fascinating too is that I always think we're living in the modern times. And even to look back at the aqueducts and so forth, things that people did have in the past, and somewhere they get lost or not thought of. So I guess we're not always as modern as we think, and there's a lot that has gone before us.
I think that's one of the things that Michio Kaku, who is a UFO person, he keeps telling people that they're not thousands of years ahead of us, they're millions of years ahead of us, and that we're really quite primitive. And yeah, we look back at the Stone Age and we think, how primitive were they, but they didn't understand a lot of things, so they made up stories about the gods. And I think that's what we're doing too, but in a more refined way, that we call them gods, and I don't think they are. I don't think that there's something that they don't want to be worshipped. I don't believe that they want to be worshipped at all. They would like us to emulate them, and we're not doing a very good job of that either.
I never really had an interest in mythology, and now at this point I haven't really been reading it, except the little that I've done in the past. But having gotten into astrology, a lot of the meaning behind the planets and how they affect us, and it's based on geometry and a lot of the angles. It refers really back to the mythology. And that's what makes me think, too, that in the past there was all this knowledge. It just didn't happen now. And again, there's a big history that every culture has had some form of astrology where they have made predictions or watched things in the sky. We have only 1 minute left. So is there anything that you'd like to add on quickly about the history of UFOs for people to be aware about in our audience?
Well, I think the Hudson Valley sightings are something that everybody should Google, take a look at. And coming up on August the 9th, there's a meteor shower that is due to hit us here, and it's not going to hit us, it's going to take place within the, But during meteor showers, often there are UFOs.
Oh, really?
They seem to, maybe they like the fireworks, I don't know, but August 9th, people should sort of mark on their calendars and look at the night sky.
Good night to be out, and it'll be warm. It's not winter time, and we probably only have 15 seconds to go. So again, I'd like to thank you for being on the program about UFOs.
My pleasure.
And the next program is going to be on about Beyond Reality. And I'd like to thank our viewers for watching. And if you have suggestions for other programs for Practical Talk Time, or comments or suggestions about this, please email us at practicaltalktime.com. No, practicaltalktime@yahoo.com. Bye-bye.